From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Some good news coming out of Louisiana.
So we're anticipating a good crop this year.
We check in with rice growers in the southern state. Machinery Pete returns to the homeland.
We traveled a family vacation this week over to Norway.
While July corn futures sink back below $4 after the release of the latest USDA report.
We felt all along like those March numbers, were artificially low.
Reaction and fallout from that report right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. More farmers choose Pioneer brand corn because it delivers game-changing yields. Join a winning team. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. USDA is calling for a bigger corn crop than it had initially predicted. The agency releasing its planted acres report at the end of last week, and it sent front-month corn futures back below the $4 mark. Now it's estimating corn acres to come in at 91.5 million acres. That's down 3% from last year, but higher than its prospective plantings report earlier in the year of more than 90 million acres. If it comes to fruition, this year's corn crop would see the 8th highest planted acreage since 1944. For soybeans, it's forecasting 86.1 million acres. That's up 3% from last year. For wheat, it's estimating a crop of 47.2 million acres. Also released the quarterly grain stocks report. It shows just under 5 billion bushels of corn, up 22% from this time a year ago, with a majority of it still stored on farms. For soybeans, 970 million bushels, also up 22%. Wheat coming in at 702 million bushels, up 23%. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me with reaction to these numbers. Michelle, corn and wheat sunk after the numbers came out.
Yeah, Clinton, corn saw both a bearish quarterly stocks and acreage number, and the combination tanked the market, pushing the July corn futures below the $4 mark. And wheat followed with its growing carryout. Really, the only bullish number in the report was the lower soybean acreage. USDA's corn acreage at 91.5 million acres was up around 1.4 million from March. Market analysts say the increase isn't as much about weather or economics, but rather the March planting intentions being too low to begin with.
We felt all along like those March numbers, were artificially low. I mean, we just felt like the grower had seen the lowest prices they'd seen in about 3 years. And so, I think that sentiment was so low that most producers weren't overly optimistic about exactly what they were going to do as far as planting was concerned, especially with really high input costs still.
Bennett says the additional acres will add to an already burdensome corn ending stocks number.
If you get a 181, you're starting to talk about a 2.5 billion bushel carry again.
Soybean acreage was more friendly at 86.1 million, which was down around 400,000 from March, with a shift to corn and other crops.
Corn probably got some of those acres. That's probably what makes the most sense. I know cotton acres were up a whole bunch too. So maybe we had a few less beans planted down in the Mid-South Delta region because we know cotton was up over 1 million acres.
But he's doubtful lower acreage will ease the soybean balance sheet a whole lot.
I mean, we have a pretty decent carryout on the balance sheet now, and moving into new crop, I don't see us being real tight there, even with this reduction in acres. Got to remember that China so far hasn't booked really anything for new crop.
Quarterly stocks were bearish for soybeans, up 174 million from last year, but especially for corn at just under 5 billion bushels, up almost 900 million from last year, which runs counter to strong cash basis levels.
Right here in the heart of central Illinois, we've had a very large processor push from 5 over to 25 over in a matter of days here over the last couple of weeks. And it's just evidenced, I think, of a grower who's fairly tight-fisted.
Total wheat acres were down around 260,000 from March, but quarterly stocks came in at 702 million bushels, up 132 million from last year, adding pressure to prices. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
There are reports of more layoffs at John Deere in Iowa. Our Quad Cities News is reporting that 279 employees at the Harvester Works plant in East Moline received layoff notices on Friday. It reports the union was informed its members were told Friday, August 30th, would be their last day. The Iowa Workforce Development listing several warn notices for the company. So far, more than 700 layoffs have been reported to the state this year. Now, the company employs 70,000 people worldwide. And more layoffs for the ag industry, this time involving AGCO. AGCO announcing in a filing with the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission that it plans to cut up to 6% of its salaried workforce. The company saying it's in response to increased weakening demand in the agricultural industry. It says it plans to focus on further cutting structural costs, streamlining the workforce, and enhancing its operating model. The global ag equipment maker also recently confirmed reports Ohio Ag Equipment is ending its distribution agreement with the manufacturer at the end of this year. Ohio Ag Equipment operates 8 stores throughout the central Ohio region. Dangerous heat in the southern plains and southeast over the weekend. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht lets us know if that summertime heat will be sticking around.
Let's look at the temperature outlook between the 5th and the 11th. Ridge of high pressure, as we've been talking about the last couple of days, that's going to continue through the 4th of July. Pocket of some cooler air, so we may get some storms trying to develop back in the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Down here to the south, just hot. Again, between the 5th and the 11th, rain chances stay low through those areas as well. So this week, as we go into 4th of July, the big story in terms of the pattern that's going to be setting up is a ridge of high pressure, a good portion of the United States, and then pieces of energy kind of working from the west to the east, right along the boundary between the ridge and also some shortwave troughs that are going to try to get in and across the United States. So again, there's July 5th through the 11th. You can see that the chances of above average temperatures, above normal temperatures, I should say, very high back through Tennessee, as well as into New Orleans, as well as Texas and through the southeast. And check this out, Matt captured something more than a wheat bean harvest in Kansas. He says his neighbor Don passed away 2 years ago. He says Don was a true wheat farmer. He said Don's son has carried his torch, and he knows Don is looking down, smiling. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Markets also reacting to the latest hogs and pigs report, which shows productivity continues to run ahead of sow liquidation here in the U.S. herd. The inventory of all hogs and pigs on June 1st totaling 74.5 million head. That's up 1% from last year and up slightly from March 1st. Breeding inventories stand at just over 6 million head, which is down 3% from a year ago and down slightly from the previous quarter. Market hog inventories at 68.5 million head, up 2% from last year and up slightly from last quarter.
I thought it was kind of neutral. I would say that even the bearish part of this marketplace would even maybe question why those numbers aren't higher. I guess with the relentless sell-off that we've had. So, you know, we're hoping for maybe a little bit of a different stance, especially with some of that weight breakdown. I thought we'd maybe see a little relief here moving forward, but it didn't show up there. The
sows farrowed during this quarter represented 49% of the breeding herd. The average pig saved per litter was 11.56 for the March to May period, compared to 11.36 last year. An unthinkable crime reported on a small farm in West Virginia. 62-year-old Gene Whitefeather and 63-year-old Donald Lance of Sissonville are charged in the case. The children range in ages from 6 to 16. Now, it's reported the children were adopted from a shelter for homeless youths. According to court documents, the couple is facing dozens of charges, including human trafficking of children and civil rights violations. An indictment alleges the children were specifically targeted by the couple and were forced to work because of their race. Now, the abuse was discovered October of last year. Deputies report having to force entry into a barn on the couple's land and finding 2 juveniles locked inside a small room. Officials said the children are all safe. The couple has pleaded not guilty. They're each being held on a $500,000 cash-only bond. Corn struggled following USDA's Friday reports. Can it find a floor? We'll talk about that coming up next. And we're off to Louisiana to see how the rice crop is looking this growing season today in the country. The corn market dropped double digits following Friday's USDA reports, pulling corn's front month contract below $4. Michelle Rook is back with where we go from here in Markets Now.
Grains ending lower on Friday after the big USDA reports. Chip Nellinger joining us with analysis. New lows for the move in the corn market. I guess we shouldn't have been surprised on Friday with a pretty bearish report on corn for both quarterly stocks and acreage, huh?
Yeah, really, the stocks numbers were a little bit bearish, unquestionably, but the big one was the corn acreage, right? And it just seems like every June we get blown away, or usually blown away by some bearish numbers on corn. So we picked up 1.5 million acres compared to the March report. That was more than the corn market could handle. A lot of fun selling, into the quarter, last day of the quarter, falling, and first notice day for July futures, all falling on the same day as these stocks and acreage reports. So you just had a lot of bearish momentum in there after the release of these reports.
So, Chip, really the only bullish part of the report was the fact that soybean acreage was down about 400,000 acres. But, does that mean a whole lot to the balance sheet?
It really doesn't. And even the big increase in corn acres, right? 1.5 million more corn acres, that adds roughly, 120 million bushels to the carryout. But it's really a drop in the bucket. The final yield is really going to drive things way more so than what these acreage tweaks we're seeing on this June crop report.
All right, so corn pulled soybeans down with it. And as we start, a new quarter, as we start maybe looking ahead at weather, do you think this market can recover at all?
I think it can recover, and maybe dramatically so. I think the market has kind of lost sight of the fact that July weather is ahead of us. This corn crop is generally behind pace as far as maturity goes. A lot of waist-high corn up there. So if we have a return of heat and dry weather in July, it's going to be at the absolute wrong time for this corn crop. And so I think July weather is going to quickly trump and overshadow what these stocks and acreage numbers said. The final yield is going to have a dramatically more important influence on the carryout than what these acreage and stocks numbers saw.
The big key will be whether the funds come back in here, though, right?
Yeah, and that's part of what the fuel could be for a big rally.
All right, thanks for joining us. Chip Nellinger, Blue Reef Agri-Marketing. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Farming has changed. Markets are riskier than ever. For customized, focused commodity marketing, contact Chip Nellinger or Adam Dreyer at 309-550-7213.
Here's a look at the jet stream coming up before Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Similar to what we saw just a little bit ago, the above average high temperatures settling in across parts of Texas and the Gulf Coast states, but also the southeast and as far north as parts of Tennessee, as well as Oklahoma. So again, this is a jet stream on Monday. You get this ridge developing here and a few troughs, shortwave troughs. Nothing that's going to dig too far down to the south, but enough Tuesday into Wednesday. We may get some widespread showers or even some isolated thunderstorms. In terms of 4th of July forecasts, the stronger and farther north this ridge is able to progress, the less likely we'll see widespread showers and storms for the 4th of July. So again, this is a jet stream on Wednesday. A couple of pieces of energy here and there Thursday. So we're looking for this weekend for another chance of some widespread showers and thunderstorms through the Dakotas, parts of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Again, that's next weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. This is going to kind of sweep down in and across, much like a kind of a weak clipper system in parts of the Midwest, where we've been seeing kind of this pattern of showers and thunderstorms every 4 to 5 days with this setup. Still, ridge of high pressure back down here to the south. Check out California baking underneath this ridge, and talking well above average temperatures with dry conditions back there on the west coast. Again, that's coming up on Friday. As for the drought monitor, in and across portions of the United States, you got some moderate to severe into the Four Corner states. as well as up towards extreme, if not exceptional, into New Mexico and Texas. On the East Coast, starting to dry out. Now you got the dry, which isn't officially a drought, wherever you see that yellow, but a moderate drought into Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida with the need for some rain. Same situation into Ohio and Indiana. We're in a dry, if not moderate drought through portions of the Midwest. It also includes Missouri as well. Start off with Ohio, high around 73 degrees, a low of about 54. Center, Colorado, you got some evening thunderstorms, high of 75, low of 50. And then Oklahoma, mostly sunny, not old Cordell or regular Cordell, but new Cordell, high of 103.
Coming up, Machinery Pete heads back to the homeland for a lesson in the importance of family history next. And later, a report from the field on how Louisiana's rice crop is faring just as farmers prepare to harvest in the country. You may know a lot about tractors on your farm and all kinds of equipment, but how much do you know about the history of the farm itself? Machinery Pete traveled all the way to Norway to discover a little of his family's history.
Hey folks, Machinery Pete here, kind of on assignment this week. I'm actually in Norway. For all these years of Thanksgiving time, I advise young people, talk to your grandparents, get that family history, the farm history, and we traveled a family vacation this week over to Norway, actually with my mother-in-law, Mom, Lois Radke here.
You said your birthday.
I did.
On the train, or the plane.
We made it to her family farm that was actually sold in 1913-ish with the family to PJ. And PJ last name again?
Helwig.
PJ, you've been filling us in on the family history, on your family here, and going way back, and incredible records. And this is incredible. I'm amazed there was farming done here. This is not flat like Minnesota.
That's right. It was very steep, but they had their own tools, and they managed it. For them, it was quite normal. And as I was coming into the farm, has been in our family's possession for about 115 years after you had it.
Yeah, I didn't inherit it.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately. Well, PJ, thank you so much for telling us the history of the farm here.
No problem.
Some of the buildings here go back 400 years.
Yeah, at least the farm is from before 1600, before this illness called sortedauer, the black disease illness, which killed a lot of Norwegians. And I also think was one of the reasons that people started to travel to America.
Right.
So, it's lots of history in the houses here.
And Mom, did you ever think you'd make it to the farm here?
No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime happening.
Folks, check out your family histories back on the farm. Ask your grandparents and great-grandparents. Lots of questions. That's an order from Machinery Pete.
All right, thanks, Pete. Farmers in Louisiana will soon be out harvesting rice. We head out into the field to see how this year's crop is progressing next in the country. So far, the weather in Louisiana has been much more conducive for growing crops this season. As the LSU Ag Center reporter Craig Gautreaux tells us, the state's rice crop is shaping up to be a good one.
For Louisiana rice farmers, the weather during the 2024 growing season has been much kinder than last year. Farmers got an early start with planting during the spring, and the crop is maturing quickly.
Right now we have a lot of rice that's headed out. We even have rice that's getting close to harvest. So we're anticipating a good crop this year. It's just a matter of what the weather is from now until we can get it out of the field.
Some of the most important research on rice production occurs at the H. Rouse Cappy Rice Research Station near Crowley. The station provides producers with essential information needed for a successful crop.
The station conducts a lot of research to provide management tips to farmers from things of weed science, pathology, entomology, agronomy, fertility. We also have a significant effort in variety development.
The varieties developed at the station have made major contributions to the rice industry, both nationally and internationally.
So we develop new varieties that are grown by the farmers in Louisiana and throughout the South, and some of the technologies and varieties that have been developed here at the rice station have been grown throughout the world.
Acreage is up slightly to approximately 470,000 acres, but this year's rice crop could have been even bigger.
Early in the season, we anticipated about 500,000 acres, so not quite what we intended to plant, but again, weather conditions always plays a part on how much rice we get planted.
Famoso said there are some new varieties in the development stage that are showing promise, and a decision will be made soon as to which ones will be released. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gocho reporting.
All right, thanks, Craig. Now farmers are expected to start harvesting that crop later this week. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Quentin Griffiths. Have a great day.